International naval arms race intensification, projected expansions of carrier groups in NATO and China by 2025 with impacts on global security. Date: January 23, 2025. Executive Summary. The ongoing naval arms race between NATO and China is set to escalate significantly by 2025, impacting global security dynamics, particularly in the Indo-Pacific region and the South China Sea. Both NATO and China are expected to enhance their carrier groups, increasing military capabilities amidst rising geopolitical tensions. The Taiwan Strait remains a critical flashpoint with the potential for conflict carrying nuclear escalation risks. Effective crisis management and communication between the U.S. and China are crucial to prevent misunderstandings that could lead to military confrontations. 1. Overview of the U.S. China relationship. The U.S. China relationship has entered a phase characterized by heightened military posturing and strategic rivalries. The U.S. Defense Department projects a dramatic increase in China's nuclear arsenal, which may reach 1,500 warheads by 2035, indicating a robust military buildup. Concurrently, NATO nations are reinforcing their naval capabilities to counterbalance China's increasing influence, particularly regarding Taiwan and maritime disputes. 2. Key trends and developments. Naval arms expansion. Both NATO and China are expected to expand their carrier groups, significantly enhancing their naval power and operational reach. Taiwan Strait tensions. The Taiwan Strait remains a potential flashpoint for military conflict, with heightened military activities from both sides escalating the risk of nuclear confrontation. Crisis management needs. There is a pressing need for effective crisis management and established communication channels to mitigate risks of misunderstandings that could lead to military confrontations. 3. Historical context and timeline. 2013. China initiates the Belt and Road Initiative (BRI), expanding its global economic footprint. 2020 to 2021, tensions over Taiwan escalate with increased U.S. support for the island, prompting military responses from China. 2023, high-profile U.S. visits to Taiwan intensify military posturing from China, raising tensions further. 2024 efforts to resume U.S. China military dialogues are attempted, focusing on strategic arms control and crisis management. 4. Comparative analysis of military capabilities. NATO's naval strategy. NATO is enhancing its naval capabilities in response to perceived threats from China, with a focus on developing advanced carrier strike groups. China's naval growth. China's naval modernization includes the expansion of its aircraft carrier fleet, emphasizing blue water capabilities to project power beyond its immediate region. Geopolitical implications. The military expansions by both NATO and China underscore a shift in global power dynamics, with implications for regional security and international maritime law. 5. Impacts on global security. The intensifying naval arms race poses several risks. Increased risk of conflict. The expansion of military capabilities increases the likelihood of miscalculations, leading to armed confrontations, particularly in contested regions like the South China Sea. Nuclear escalation concerns. The potential for nuclear escalation in a conflict scenario remains a significant concern, particularly with the evolving nature of military strategies on both sides. Global economic impact. Military tensions may lead to disruptions in global trade, impacting economic stability and cooperation. 6. Recommendations for crisis management. To mitigate the risks associated with the naval arms race, the following measures are recommended. Enhanced communication. Establish robust communication channels between military leaders of the U.S. and China to prevent misunderstandings during crises. Crisis management protocols. Develop clear protocols for military engagements in contested areas. Emphasizing de-escalation. International collaboration. Encourage cooperative frameworks involving regional allies to address security concerns collectively and reduce the likelihood of unilateral military actions. Conclusion. The intensification of the naval arms race between NATO and China highlights the urgent need for effective crisis management and international cooperation. As both sides expand their military capabilities, the focus must shift towards preventing conflict and ensuring regional stability to navigate the complexities of modern geopolitical dynamics. The document provides a comprehensive analysis of the ongoing international naval arms race between NATO and China, particularly focusing on projected expansions of carrier groups by 2025 and their potential impacts on global security. The information reveals several counterintuitive aspects regarding the dynamics of this arms race, the motivations of the involved parties, and the broader implications for international relations. Counterintuitive insights. 1. Economic interdependence despite rivalry. It may seem logical that heightened military competition would lead to complete economic decoupling between the U.S. and China. However, the text posits that significant levels of economic interdependence could remain even amidst intense rivalry. This suggests that both nations could continue to engage economically while simultaneously preparing for military conflict. 2. China's military buildup as defensive. While many view China's military expansion as aggressive, the document indicates that some analysts interpret it as a defensive strategy aimed at protecting national sovereignty and deterring perceived threats, particularly from the U.S. This perspective challenges the predominant narrative of an expansionist China. 3. Managed competition over confrontation. A managed competition model where both sides recognize shared interests and avoid outright conflict contrasts sharply with the expectation that competitive dynamics will inevitably lead to war. The emphasis on establishing crisis management and communication channels suggests that proactive diplomacy can mitigate risks, a notion that runs counter to the belief that tensions must escalate uncontrollably. 4. Nuclear deterrence as a stabilizing factor. The idea that the presence of nuclear weapons could serve as a stabilizing factor in U.S. China relations is unconventional. The document suggests that mutual vulnerability could deter both sides from engaging in escalatory actions, potentially leading to a more stable strategic environment, contrary to the common belief that nuclear arsenals inherently increase the likelihood of conflict. 5. The illusion of absolute military superiority. The notion that military superiority guarantees security is challenged. The U.S. military may possess greater capability on a global scale, but the document argues that in regional conflicts like those in the South China Sea or around Taiwan, local knowledge and the sheer size of China's forces could level the playing field, indicating a more nuanced understanding of military power. 6. Potential for cooperation on global challenges. The text underscores the potential for U.S.-China cooperation on pressing global issues, e.g. climate change, health, pandemics, despite their adversarial relationship. This highlights a counterintuitive aspect of international relations where competition does not preclude collaboration on shared global challenges. 7. Economic influence as a tool of stability. Rather than solely viewing economic statecraft as a coercive tool, the document suggests that China's economic influence could stabilize certain global dynamics by providing much-needed investment and development in various regions, which may inadvertently benefit U.S. interests by fostering stability in those areas. 8. Domestic political dynamics impacting foreign policy. The interplay between domestic politics in both the U.S. and China and their foreign policies may seem straightforward, but the document posits that shifts in leadership and public sentiment could drastically alter the trajectory of U.S.-China relations. This means that external policy decisions may not always align neatly with internal political pressures. 9. The role of allies and partners. While one might expect allied nations to uniformly support their primary ally, the U.S., the document emphasizes that these countries will also weigh their own interests, which could lead to a more complex and sometimes contradictory stance on U.S.-China relations. This complexity could produce unexpected outcomes in military and economic alignments. 10. The misunderstanding of Chinese motivations. The assumption that China aggressively seeks global hegemony overlooks the possibility that its leaders may prioritize national stability and control over international dominance. The document points out that China's actions are often framed in a context of historical grievances and a desire to reclaim its status rather than outright global conquest. Conclusion. The document illustrates the complexity of the U.S. China relationship amidst an intensifying naval arms race. By identifying these counterintuitive insights, it challenges conventional wisdom about international relations, military dynamics, and economic interactions, suggesting that a more nuanced understanding of these factors is critical for navigating future engagements between these global powers. The report, titled Competitive International Naval Arms Race Intensification, Projected Expansions of Carrier Groups in NATO and China by 2025 with Impacts on Global Security, delves into the intensifying naval arms race between NATO and China, analyzing its implications for global security. While the report provides a broad overview of the current geopolitical climate, there are several nuanced aspects that may be overlooked by many readers. Here are some key overlooked elements and their significance. 1. Integration of information from all sources. The report emphasizes the importance of understanding the multifaceted nature of the U.S. China relationship, which is characterized by a blend of military, economic, and diplomatic dimensions. One crucial aspect often overlooked is the growing interdependence of these elements. For instance, while military posturing is apparent, the economic ties remain strong, and both nations are unlikely to completely sever their relationships due to mutual dependencies. This interdependence is significant because it suggests that despite rising tensions, both countries may seek to manage their rivalry through cooperative economic engagements, thus potentially averting outright conflict. 2. The Taiwan flashpoint. The Taiwan Strait is identified as a potential flashpoint for military confrontation, which could escalate into a conflict involving nuclear weapons. However, the report highlights the complexity of the situation. The nuances of Taiwan's political status and the varying interpretations of the One China policy are crucial to understanding the potential for conflict. The significance lies in the delicate balance of deterrence and the need for strategic communication. Misunderstandings or miscalculations during crises could lead to unintended escalation, underscoring the necessity for effective dialogue mechanisms between the U.S. and China. 3. Crisis management and communication channels. While the report emphasizes the need for improved crisis management and communication, the significance of this point is often underestimated. The establishment of direct communication channels to manage military incidents could play a pivotal role in reducing the risks of escalation. This aspect is crucial because effective communication can prevent minor incidents from spiraling into major conflicts, especially in a high-stakes environment with nuclear capabilities involved. The lack of such channels can lead to a security dilemma where both sides may feel compelled to act aggressively due to perceived threats, even when neither side desires conflict. 4. Managed competition as a framework. The report calls for a shift towards managed competition between the U.S. and China. This concept, while mentioned, deserves deeper exploration. Managed competition implies that both powers recognize their rivalry but choose to engage in a way that avoids military confrontation. This approach is significant as it opens the door for diplomatic engagement and cooperation in areas where interests align, such as climate change, global health, and economic stability. The potential for collaboration despite competition suggests a more stable international environment which could benefit global security. 5. Differences in motivations and perspectives. The report discusses differing interpretations of China's military expansion. Some view it as defensive while others see it as aggressive. This divergence in perspectives is significant because it shapes the strategic calculations of both parties. Understanding these motivations can inform U.S. policies towards China, allowing for a more nuanced approach that considers not just threats but also opportunities for engagement. Recognizing China's perspective on sovereignty, national pride. And regional stability can help the U.S. develop strategies that address the underlying issues driving Chinese behavior. 6. The role of alliances and partnerships. The report outlines NATO's response to China's naval expansion but does not fully explore the implications of alliances in the Indo-Pacific region. The dynamics of U.S. alliances with countries like Japan, Australia, and India could significantly influence the balance of power in the region. These alliances are crucial for collective security and deterrence against aggressive moves by China. The significance lies in the fact that the strength of these alliances can serve as a counterbalance to China's growing military capabilities, potentially stabilizing the region and deterring aggression. 7. Economic and diplomatic dimensions of military expansion. While the report focuses heavily on military capabilities, it overlooks the economic and diplomatic implications of naval expansions. The expansion of carrier groups is not solely a military endeavor but also a means of exerting influence and projecting power economically and diplomatically. Understanding this multidimensional approach can provide insights into how naval capabilities are used not just for defense but also to strengthen economic ties and diplomatic relationships in key regions. 8. Public perception and domestic politics. The report touches on the impact of public perception on U.S. China relations but does not delve into how domestic politics in both countries affect their foreign policy decisions. In the U.S., bipartisan consensus is increasingly leaning towards a tougher stance on China, which may limit the room for diplomatic engagement. In China, the narrative of U.S. containment shapes public support for assertive foreign policies. The significance of these domestic narratives cannot be understated, as they can drive decisions that escalate tensions rather than promote collaboration. Conclusion. The intensification of the naval arms race between NATO and China presents a complex landscape for global security. The nuances within the report, particularly regarding interdependence, crisis management, managed competition, and the roles of alliances, provide critical insights that may be overlooked. Understanding these dimensions is essential for policymakers and analysts to navigate the evolving geopolitical environment and work towards stabilizing relations between these powerful nations. By focusing on dialogue, recognizing mutual interests, and fostering cooperation, there is potential to mitigate risks and enhance global security in the face of rising military capabilities. The analysis of the intensifying naval arms race between NATO and China, particularly concerning the expansions of carrier groups by 2025, reveals several critical points of discussion that can significantly impact global security dynamics. Here are 4 valuable points for in-depth analysis and discussion. 1. Military expansion and strategic rivalry. The projected expansions of carrier groups by both NATO and China highlight the escalating military capabilities and strategic posturing in critical regions, especially the Indo-Pacific and the South China Sea. The U.S. Defense Department's assessment that China's nuclear arsenal could reach 1,500 warheads by 2035 underscores the urgency of this military buildup. This expansion is not only about increasing military assets but also reflects a deeper strategic rivalry that has the potential to destabilize the balance of power in the Asia-Pacific region. The implications of this rivalry are profound, as both sides enhance their military capabilities. The risk of miscalculations leading to direct conflict escalates. 2. Crisis management and communication channels. The necessity for effective crisis management and communication channels between the U.S. and China is paramount in preventing misunderstandings that could precipitate military confrontations. The Taiwan Strait remains a critical flashpoint where any military action could spiral into a nuclear escalation. The emphasis on developing robust communication mechanisms to manage crises and reduce tensions is essential for maintaining regional stability. Without these measures, the likelihood of unintended conflicts arising from military posturing increases, potentially leading to catastrophic outcomes. 3. Deterrence and stability. The themes of deterrence and stability are central to understanding the evolving military dynamics. Analysts are advocating for a managed competition approach where both NATO and China recognize the existential threats posed by unchecked aggression. This involves establishing a stable military balance where neither side feels compelled to act preemptively due to fears of being overrun or outmaneuvered. The role of allies and partners in this dynamic cannot be understated. Strengthening alliances and ensuring collective defense commitments will contribute significantly to deterrence and the overall stability of the region. 4. Economic and diplomatic dimensions. While the military aspects dominate discussions, the economic and diplomatic dimensions are equally crucial. The potential for a G2 arrangement where the U.S. and China could cooperate on global economic issues while managing their rivalry is a topic of significant importance. The interplay between military expansion and economic interdependence suggests that both nations will need to navigate their competitive relationship carefully to avoid economic decoupling that could exacerbate tensions. Diplomatic efforts should focus on finding common ground on global challenges such as climate change and health security, which require cooperative solutions despite the ongoing rivalry. Conclusion. In summary, the intensification of the naval arms race between NATO and China by 2025 presents a multifaceted challenge to global security. The interplay of military expansion, the necessity for effective crisis management, the importance of deterrence and stability, and the economic and diplomatic dimensions all contribute to a complex landscape that requires thoughtful analysis and proactive measures. As both sides navigate this evolving situation, the emphasis on managed competition and diplomatic engagement will be critical in avoiding conflicts that could have far-reaching consequences for the world. 1. The naval arms race between the United States and the Soviet Union Cold War era. This historical case exemplifies a significant arms race between two superpowers vying for naval superiority. Throughout the Cold War, both the United States and the Soviet Union expanded their naval fleets, developed nuclear submarines, and enhanced their aircraft carriers, leading to heightened tensions and numerous confrontations at sea, most notably during the Cuban Missile Crisis. The competition for dominance in naval power during this period shaped global security dynamics and established many of the military doctrines still relevant today. 2. The Anglo-German naval arms race, early 20th century. In the years leading up to World War I, Britain and Germany engaged in a fierce naval arms race characterized by the construction of dreadnoughts and other battleships. This competition was fueled by national pride, imperial ambitions, and the desire for maritime supremacy. The buildup of naval forces contributed to escalating tensions in Europe and was one of the factors leading to the outbreak of the war. The implications of this rivalry on global security and alliances are still studied in the context of military strategy and international relations. 3. The India-Pakistan arms race. Following their independence in 1947, India and Pakistan have engaged in a protracted arms race, particularly focused on nuclear capabilities. Both nations have developed and expanded their nuclear arsenals, with notable military confrontations such as the wars in 1947-1965 and the Kargil conflict in 1999 heightening their military posturing. The ongoing military competition has significant implications for regional security, especially concerning Kashmir, and demonstrates the risks associated with nuclear proliferation and the potential for conflict in a densely populated area. These historical cases provide context for understanding the potential implications of the current naval arms race between NATO and China as both sides enhance their carrier group capabilities and engage in strategic maritime competition. The intensification of the international naval arms race between NATO and China by 2025 is poised to reshape global security dynamics, particularly in the Indo-Pacific region. Key projections indicate that both NATO and China will significantly expand their carrier groups, escalating military capabilities that could lead to increased tensions in competition. Key predictions. 1. Expansion of naval forces. China. By 2025, China is projected to enhance its carrier group significantly, with an aim to reach a total of at least 12 aircraft carriers. This expansion will be supported by advancements in naval technology and increased military spending.
aimed at asserting its influence in the South China Sea and around Taiwan.
NATO. In response to China's growing naval capabilities, NATO member states will likely increase their naval presence in the Indo-Pacific through joint exercises and the deployment of additional carrier strike groups. This will include the integration of European naval forces to bolster deterrence efforts. 2. Regional flashpoints. The Taiwan Strait is forecasted to remain a critical flashpoint, with military posturing from both sides escalating tensions. Increased Chinese military exercises around Taiwan may provoke stronger U.S. support for Taiwan, potentially leading to a military confrontation that could escalate into a larger conflict involving nuclear powers. 3. Crisis management mechanisms. As military tensions rise, communication channels between the U.S. and China will become increasingly vital to prevent misunderstandings and miscalculations. Enhanced crisis management protocols will be necessary to mitigate the risks of accidental escalation during naval encounters. 4. Economic and diplomatic dimensions. The naval arms race will have significant economic implications, with both NATO and China investing heavily in their military-industrial complexes. This could result in increased economic rivalry, particularly in technology sectors related to naval capabilities such as shipbuilding, advanced weapons systems, and maritime surveillance. 5. Shift in global alliances. As both NATO and China bolster their naval forces, we may see shifts in global alliances. Countries in the Indo-Pacific may be compelled to choose sides, increasing the complexity of regional geopolitics. Nations like Australia, Japan, and India may further solidify their partnerships with the U.S. and NATO to counterbalance China's influence. 6. Nuclear deterrence. The projected increase in China's nuclear arsenal, potentially reaching 1,500 warheads by 2035, will heighten concerns about nuclear deterrence in the region. This dynamic will necessitate new arms control discussions and agreements to manage escalation risks, particularly in light of Taiwan-related tensions. Impacts on global security. Increased risk of conflict. The expansion of carrier groups and naval capabilities by both NATO and China could lead to a higher likelihood of military confrontations, particularly in contested areas. The potential for miscalculation during naval operations poses serious risks to regional stability. Global economic consequences. A sustained naval arms race could disrupt global trade routes, particularly in the South China Sea, impacting economies reliant on maritime trade. The economic consequences could further exacerbate tensions and lead to retaliatory measures. Diplomatic challenges. Strained relations and rising military posturing will complicate diplomatic engagements, making it more difficult to address other global issues such as climate change and pandemics that require cooperative international efforts. Potential for managed competition. While the naval arms race poses significant challenges, it also emphasizes the need for managed competition strategies to ensure that the rivalry does not escalate into open conflict. This may involve establishing clear communication and crisis management protocols alongside arms control discussions. Conclusion. By 2025, the international naval arms race between NATO and China is expected to intensify significantly. The projected expansions of carrier groups by both sides, combined with the geopolitical complexities surrounding Taiwan and regional alliances, will have profound implications for global security. To navigate these challenges, establishing effective crisis communication channels, fostering diplomatic engagement, and pursuing arms control agreements will be essential to prevent conflict and ensure stability in a rapidly changing security landscape.